Hi, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Hecate, and this is Finding Okay, a healing podcast for survivors of sexual assault and abuse. And I'm here today with Santéresa Wilson. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. I'm
And
doing well.
I should actually change that into my first icebreaker, which is, are you okay?
Yes, I am okay. I think that my day's been good. The shift of everything that's happened during COVID has placed me in a good place. So I'm good.
Wonderful. Yeah, and you just we were just talking about this, but you just moved recently, yes?
Yes, I did. So it's just the settling part. I hate moving. I think that people shouldn't move very frequently.
It's very stressful.
It
It
is.
throws your whole life and just kind of topsy-turvy and
Yeah,
yeah.
especially trying to find things. Even if you like label it, separate it, it's still like, did I forget something? But I can always go back to where I came from because my roommate stayed there and actually go retrieve if I forgot something. So that's the good part. That's the good part.
That is a good part. That is a rare blessing. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So, I would also love to hear a compliment that you've received that you've never forgotten.
Um, Actually, it was in regards to my book. And the particular person that I had to read my book said that after she read the book that she no longer felt the need that she had to write one because she already had my book and so decided to promote my book instead. So
That's so beautiful.
yeah.
Oh, wow, to have it like so strongly connect with somebody. That's so powerful.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
never really forgot that, and it pushed me to just keep going. You know, sometimes we question things about ourselves, or we question should we do whatever it is that we task out to do. And so that was just a big encourager for me to just keep going.
Yeah. And I would love to hear what is your favorite color or color combination and what do you associate with it?
I love royal purple. It reminds me of just royalty, and I love white. It reminds me of purity. So,
Mm.
like, I don't like like dingy white. You know how like you wash white and it changes color? I'll get rid of it. I think that white should just be pure, like a pure
Mhm.
color. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's extraordinary.
it
And
is.
they're so exquisite together as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And yeah, I'm probably this is when you asked me for the promo images and I was like, sometimes I change it. Because when people give their answers, I love to include some of their favorite color because now I know a little bit more about them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll probably create some that have like some of that royal purple in them and send them
Gotcha.
your way. So
That'd be
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it will,
Yeah.
especially with the black and the golds that you have
Mm-hmm.
in some of those pictures. That'll
Yeah,
look
that'd be pretty.
gorgeous.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be cute. Yeah.
Um, but lost my place. Uh, what 5 things best represent you as a person?
I would say, I would say God in church, um, music, uh, people, right? God, church, music, people, and I would say family.
Oh, wow.
I know people and family are kind of like people, family, but it's two separate entities for me.
They very much are loving the places that they occupy in your life and also like the kind of love and also like the way that you have to work on that love and find that within yourself and
Yes,
the work that's required in that relationship. It's all just very, very different. Yeah.
yes,
Thank you for
yes,
sharing those. Those are beautiful.
yes. Thank you.
Yeah. And what are 3 essentials to your self-care?
Quiet time. Just to have time to reflect. Journaling. Um, I have different journals. I buy journals all the time, And for me, journaling, you could journal about your day. Then I have this one journal where I just empty out every single thought that's coming through my mind, and it's not formatted. It's just kind of like whatever I think about, that's what I write. And that's what I just call really emptying out your whole mind and your whole thought process and everything. You just write, and it will not make sense. Like some people think about it, think about what they're going to write. No, you just have to write and not think about what you're writing, what format it is, just write. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And church,
Mm.
prayer in church. Yeah. So,
Are you willing to share what kind of church you go to or what that looks like for you?
yeah, so I go to a Pentecostal church, which is charismatic type of church. Um, with COVID virtual, you can go to any kind of church nowadays. But I love the worship. I love the music. I love the prayer. I love the fellowship. And so for me, that's kind of being around the like-minded people and just gaining strength and gleaning off of what they have to offer. You kind of like pour into each other. I believe that iron sharpens iron, which means that, we as people, we're there to build each other up and strengthen each other, at all times. I just believe that humankind, we do that anyway. So yeah,
That's beautiful.
thank you.
And so you mentioned COVID. Have the services become virtual for you? Do you attend virtual church or?
So we used to attend virtual church. I am what you would call, I was about to say, an essential worker in church. So I am a worship leader in church. I sing. And so when, they started opening back up and letting us back in, I was able to go in before the congregation. I would go and sing before my pastor preached. So I've been back for a while, but we have opened up the doors. We are allowed to have, I think, up to 50% capacity. A lot of people still do virtual, so we do virtual, but we have two services. So we have one for the elderly, higher risk people, and then we have our normal service time.
That's
So,
great.
yeah.
Wow, I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I don't know a lot of people right now that actually attend church. So I keep just seeing the signs, and I've
Mhm.
been really curious about what that's been like for people or how they've been handling it
And
because I
it's
know
a lot of churches
it's a
too where you have to
big thing.
reserve before you go and things like that. My church is kind of, I wouldn't say small, but on a smaller scale from a mega church. So it's good to have that intimate type of setting. I think a lot of the mega churches, some are open, some aren't. Some you have to reserve and, before you go to church. So it just so happens that we happen to be open.
I really
And
like
then
the
you get
term
the
mega
temperature
church.
check. Yeah, you get the temperature checked, you get the questions asked, you have to come in, wash your hands, sanitize. So it's a lot, a lot of different protocols that need to be
Yeah,
followed.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine it would be kind of like new rituals. Um,
Yes. And we wear a
yeah,
mask during service. So we social
good.
distance. So yeah, it's the same
Yeah,
thing. You just implement everything else that's going on. If they're doing it when you go into stores, you could still do the same thing in church and have your sense of normalcy still.
yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're back and that
Thank you.
everybody's, staying safe and that you've been able to maintain that community that's so important to your self-care during this
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Yes.
That's good. That's
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Thank you for talking about that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. So I would actually love to start off and talk about your book. And yeah, so I read it and it's really beautiful and
Thank
very
you.
powerful. At one point, I actually just kind of sat there and just kind of cried a little bit. But it is called Releasing My Secret, and it is a 30-day devotional to support your healing process. And it is really beautiful, just the way that it's laid out. And I'd love to hear in your own words, kind of what this is and how it came about and how this book came into being.
Okay. So, in regards to the book, It started a long time ago. I think I had started writing. I wanted to write something, but I didn't know what to write. And being a survivor of sexual assault, a lot of times we hear people's stories. We hear stories of survival. We hear stories of, everybody has a different story about how they came through what they've gone through. Very few times do you really hear where they offer help a lot of times, or really like step by step instructions on how they get through. A lot of times you hear people offer help to remove themselves from a situation, but then people are kind of stuck in an emotional state of where emotionally they're still stuck, right? And so for me, I did an event that was entitled Take Back the Night, which is an annual event that they have worldwide, where they kind of come and they celebrate survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and people tell their stories and things. And I was honored to be on the platform of this particular Take Back the Night, which was held in Plainfield. And so, Plainfield, New Jersey. And so, that night I gained my voice. It was so surreal. Just to be able to talk about my assault. My assault is not common to most assaults that happen. My story is a little bit unique. And so a lot of people were encouraged by the story. They felt empowered. And so for me, I was like, okay, I need to pen a book. And what better way than to birth something that is written based off of a person's emotions of what they deal with. I understand that healing is a process. So a lot of people say you can heal, you can heal, you can heal. And so I feel like sometimes people get disappointed because they feel like their healing should have happened a long time ago, or it should have happened a week after the assault, or maybe a couple of years have gone down the line. And so the devotional, Releasing My Secret, is the title alone deals with the secrets that we deal with on a continuous basis when we feel violated or traumatized in some type of way. And they become secrets because a lot of times we don't want to share with people. Like, I'm still going through this. I'm still dealing with fear. I'm still dealing with self identity. I'm still dealing with forgiveness issues. And so those are our secrets, right? Our intimate secrets that we deal with late at night when no one's around, or we find that we can't always disclose it to people. So the book is written based off of emotions. It's not necessarily written based off of my assault. It's based off of emotions. And that's why the book is so relatable to people who have gone through various traumas, because those emotions are emotions that we all experience. So the book presents you with a devotional. It presents you with an affirmation, a daily affirmation. There's a prayer, there's a scripture, and I sing. And I love music, so I put a suggestive song of worship. And so when I wrote the book, even the songs, it's not like the standard. You can always find a song in there that could go with the type of music that you listen to, because I listen to all different types of music. And so the book is just basically to be a guide to walk with you. It's not 1 through 30, like I'm on day 5 and today's day 5 and let me look at day 5. It's really written to say, okay, I'm going through this emotion right now. Let me read this page. And then 2 days later, you could be angry. Let me read that page. And now, I'm hurting again and dealing with unforgiveness. Let me go back to that emotion, because trauma presents you with different emotions every single day. And sometimes it's not the same emotion that you're dealing with. I could be happy today and sad tomorrow. And so that's how the book is written, so that it's not formatted so that you feel stuck to these 30 solid days. It's written so that it's guiding you along. So even if you put the book down for 10 days, 20 days, you can always be like, oh, I'm not feeling my best today. And then you can always pick up the book and go, what does the book say about that? And then turn to that page and deal with that. So the book was really just intended to be a guide to walk along people as they deal with their secrets of whatever emotions that they're dealing with.
I loved that about the book, because something that I'm always really saying just over and over and over, and I think it's so important for survivors to know, to experience, for somebody to tell them, is that healing isn't linear. It's all over the place, and it's going to be one thing one day and something else the next, and then it might go
Yeah.
back to what it was before, and so it's not this incremental thing, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, like day 1, day 2, day 3, and then you're done with day 1. You might have to go back to that. So I loved that we think of books
Yeah.
being linear, and I loved that you wrote a non-linear book for a linear experience of healing from trauma. And that was I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah,
Thank
so
you.
how long did this take you to write? Like how did you yeah, I just I feel like you might have been on a roll, and that a sound experience might have like tripped you up, so I just wanted to ask if there was anything else that you wanted to say about the book.
No, not really. I mean, it took me about a year and a half to write the book. I poured my heart into the book, and it was days where I was writing and I was like bawling, like crying so hard. A lot of times when I wrote the book, the song that I chose, it would be on repeat. I would have my headsets on and I would just be listening and crying because I kind of relived those emotions. For every emotion I wrote, I really relived it. And so I had the strength when I first started writing the book to write the book. But I wanted to put everything into it so that when someone read it, they actually knew that I'm writing from experience. My writing, all my writings, even my upcoming book is from experience, is what I've gone through. And so a lot of times I'm there and I'm reliving it and experiencing unforgiveness and experiencing anger and experiencing feeling lost. And so it was just like a life changing experience for myself. I still pick up the book and read the book sometimes because sometimes I have to go back and be like, huh, I need that breather. So, yeah, but it did take me that long to actually write the book because it was certain days where I was like, I don't want to feel like this, right? I don't want to feel that emotion. I thought I was over that. Like, I don't want to feel that. And so I would put it down and pick it up. And then I was encountering so many different people who I'm like, they could benefit from, I have to get it out. They could benefit from this. So,
Yeah. No, it's beautiful, and it honestly, even though I'm not Christian, I do feel like this is a book that I could return to. And I did actually did have a very powerful kind of healing experience reading it that really surprised me. That just had to do with I mean, I have my own trauma that is oh, put the pen down. That's bad for sound. But sorry, just talking to myself. But I was just like clicking it. I'm like, great,
it's
that's
okay.
awesome. But yeah, I have my own trauma with Christianity where you know, and usually when someone experiences religious trauma, it's because they were actually in that religion, but for me it was actually completely different, you know. So it was the experience of having people who were Christian who were using you know, the Bible or Jesus as a weapon. And so you experience it as a weapon if you, especially if you've never if you haven't grown up with associating, you know, that name with love, then having your first experience of it be an experience of hate or violence, you know, is understandably traumatic. But
Yeah.
reading this was a really beautiful reminder that was their failing, and that it's my job to take that healing on myself, and to say, you know, whatever, you know, whatever way that they misused you know, the word of God or Jesus, you know, that's on them. That's between them
That's
and
there. Yeah.
their creator. And it's between me and my creator to acknowledge that name doesn't mean what they made me think it does. That, you know, the name of Jesus
Hmm.
means love, the name of God means love, and that's what it is,
Yeah.
no matter what happens. That trauma and 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 God are two
Yeah.
different things, and to begin to really separate them from myself. So this book really helped me with that. And I wanted to thank you. So yeah.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you. You're
those
about to make me
were
cry.
aside, but oh
Because that's but that's no, but that's the purpose, like trauma has no religion, trauma has no race attached to it, trauma has no religion attached to it. And so that's the key, because we all go through it, right? It's just like COVID had no name, it had no race, it had no age, it had no, anything attached to it, but we all experienced it. And so that's the key. And so that just really touched me. That might have to go, you asked me
yeah.
that question in the beginning. I might have to put that as my response, but thank you. And, I definitely thank God for that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Um well, feeling things. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Oh, well, let's yeah, so I would actually you mentioned Take Back the Night, and I love that that was a part of your experience because that was definitely a part of my
Yes.
experience as well. And so I would love to hear more about that. How did you find out about it? Did you have to get up the courage to go? How did you end up speaking? Do you remember what you said? I'm just very curious.
So I was a volunteer with our local rape crisis center here in New Jersey, and being an advocate for a while. They always want close to crisis center to partake in those type of events, because number one, it could be a trigger for someone where someone could need someone to speak to that day, and then number two, just to show people that we are there for them, and if they need any type of services. And so they were looking for representatives. They asked if anyone wanted to speak, and I was like, sure, I'll speak. I really had no clue what I was going to say, um, but I spoke, and so this is the reason why, and it kind of leads into my story, if you don't mind. I don't know if you're going to ask me that down the road, but so it my speech is actually on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, which is my name, Coach Santéresa Wilson, and so that clip is actually on there. Um, so just a little bit about my assault. Of course, when you're training, if anyone's out there and they know, because a lot of people normally go from a survivor to, I want to work the crisis line. A lot of people do that. Or they have a family member who have gone through sexual assault and they decide to work the line. And so you go through this very intense training. And even though the training is preparing you to work with those who have been assaulted, um, the training is actually, I feel, healing for you, right? And so you learn about different types of domestic violence. You learn about different types of sexual violation, whether you're being coerced, whether you're being forced, whether, you all of a sudden you decide to just change your mind, and, just different types of how you could differently be violated, right? And so for me, it was like an awakening moment because I was very active at a young age. And so when I started reflecting on the relationships that I've gone through, or so thought relationships that I had because I was so young, then you realize that, oh man, I've been violated so many times, right? But what got me was my sexual assault. And I would say the number one sexual assault that I went through, the whole experience. And I'll partially tell my story. So I was in my 20s. It was around Christmas time, and I'd taken my kids to their aunt's house. I was getting the house ready for Christmas. A neighbor's friend knocked on my door. She was an acquaintance and asked me for a ride. I said, okay. I really don't normally ride people anywhere, but I'm like, it's holiday time. You ain't really thinking about it. Okay, not a problem. So I take them to their destination. I pull back up in front of my apartment building, and she is like, go in your house. If you scream, I'm going to kill you. I'm like, what? Right? And so I just did what she said. I didn't know what else to do. I've never encountered anything like that before. And so I go in my house. She pulls out a knife. Now I have a knife to my throat. And I'm like crying profusively. I'm like, God, spare my life. if I got to die tonight, Lord, please say I'll make it to heaven because I don't know what's going on right now. And so that night was like 12 hours of sodomy. It was a lot of mental torment. She had like bumps on her. I had to pop bumps and, whatever. And I apologize because I did not say possible trigger. But, and so that was my whole night, 12 hours. And so when she left, she took my money. She took the keys to my house, and she left and told me if I ever told that she would come back and kill me. And so I was scared. Of course, I tell who? My neighbors, because that's their friend, right? And so they say, oh, we're going to handle this the street way. The street way, I think it was just, we're going to handle this, privately. And so they was like, take a shower. So I take a shower. And they take me to the casino down in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And they give me $100. And I guess the $100 in the casino and the shower was supposed to wash away what I went through, what I experienced. They convinced her to give me back my money and my keys, but I still experienced something, right? So I called the hotline, and the hotline was telling me, oh, you could still go, they could do an exam, you have this amount of time. And I was scared because of the threat that was made. And so I waited, and probably about a week later, I finally went. Now I reported. But this time when I reported, it was a little bit different because, again, I was past the time for the exam. So by the time I went, they really couldn't collect DNA evidence. But however, they caused me to, you have to commit when you report, right? They want you to commit and be true to your story. And if you renege after you commit, then, they could technically prosecute you. And so I went through the whole criminal justice system. It was about 12 charges. They wound up picking her up, locking her up. And I went to grand jury. I told my story. The jurors laughed at me. I mean, I remember sitting there telling my story of all I went through and got laughed at. And so I walked out of there. They did not indict at all. They kicked it back to municipal, and she got one charge out of all the 12 of disorderly persons. They backdated it to when she was first originally locked up. So by the time we went to municipal court and we had the court case, her 90 days that she got jail time for disorderly persons automatically released her. And so then I couldn't get a restraining order because we were never in a relationship. We had no children together, and we never lived together. And so I was left to walk around in fear for years, literally years. And, I am so grateful for the detective that I had who was on my case, because he stood by my side. And I used to always go back and go visit him and, just to say hello, because he stood by my side even when I got laughed at. And so unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. But that, if it wasn't for him, at that time, I don't think that I would have been able to endure, because people at the time were like, same sex rape. Like, what do you mean same sex? And it's kind of like, yeah, it happened. And so the embarrassment of saying it, to people, explaining it. And so take back to that night, I told my story. I told my story. I found my voice that night. I mean, a lot of people, they tell their stories, but for me, that was one of okay, so let me just table back. Before I did take back the night, my pastor had preached a sermon about forgiveness. And I realized that I never forgave that person for doing what they did to me, right? And so I had to let it go. And I believe that forgiveness is not necessarily forgetting the action. It's actually just releasing the emotions that's tied to the trauma so that you can feel free. Because sometimes we hold on to those emotions and we feel so heavy and so burdened down. And so, like, you get sick, you still feel the side effects from the emotions. And so I literally released it. And then I Facebooked her. And I said, I forgive you for what you did to me. Her response was rape, LOL. But it wasn't about her response. It was about the sincerity of me saying, I'm no longer going to feel hatred towards you. I'm no longer going to feel scared of you, right? I'm no longer going to allow for that. Where every time Christmas comes around, I'm reflecting on what happened to me. I'm no longer giving you that much power in my life. So I forgive you so I can let it go. And so after I did that, I literally take back the night was you have your voice back again. Because that's the first thing that happens when we go through a trauma, we go through sexual assault. The first thing that we lose is our voice because we don't know what to say. We don't know how to express it. We don't know how to come out of our mouths and to verbally, say anything or whatever. Like we literally lose our voice. And that night gave me my voice back.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that you had that experience of reclaiming that, and thank you also for I mean there's so many parts of that story that are so important for people to hear. I mean, I think you might be the first person on the show who's actually gone through the justice system. Um, most people that I
Okay.
talk to never reported, and so it's incredible to hear what that experience was like for you. And I'm so sorry that it involved that level of ignorance and cruelty.
Mhm.
That's very upsetting, and I'm so glad that you had that officer who was so supportive. It's also great to hear that you had that that kind of support from the police, because a lot of the time I hear that the police were actually, a part of why someone didn't report, because the police in the initial uh kind of process weren't supportive, or maybe they were the ones that laughed. And so I'm so glad that you had that officer in your
So
life.
let me just let me just say that being a sexual assault advocate, we know that when you report, and I just wanted to throw this out there because I've been in situations to where people who have reported it has been um, a positive process for them. And because I don't want anyone to feel like if they go through it, it's going to be, that was my experience. And I believe that the ignorance came from because it was same sex, right? Um, to know your rights is to understand that when you report you have a sexual assault and you report to the hospital, number one, the hospital is obligated to put you in a private room separate from everyone else, a very private room. You're going to have a nurse who specializes, who's going to come in and do your exams. There's a police officer who may or may not come, and you'll have an advocate, such as what I was, right? And so you have a choice. And I don't want anyone to feel like you don't have a choice. And that's the beautiful thing about that part of the justice system. So the choice is this: you can say, I want a full examination. However, I do not want to report to the police, and the police have to leave. You do not have to report. You can say, take my DNA now, and I'll go Jane Doe just so you can have my specimen on file. And they're obligated, I believe it's 5 years that they keep it or something like that. And they keep your specimen on file as a Jane Doe just with a number on it. So if you ever change your mind about reporting, say a year later, 2 years later, they have that information, that DNA, they collect all of that. They take your clothes, your underwear, they take everything, and they give you a fresh pair of clothes, a fresh pair of underwear, hygiene products, and all that stuff. Um, I would say don't be afraid to go. Don't worry about the police. Even if you have a criminal, say a warrant somewhere, they cannot take and seize that moment to arrest you because you already just went through something that was traumatic. So they're obligated to cater to you in that moment, whatever that moment is for you. And your advocate is there to be your voice. Now you could decline your advocate, you could decline the police officer, you could decline the nurse. You could just go and get an exam. You could say, I don't want anything done, I just want to get some medication, give me a couple shots, something like that. um or my recommendations wholeheartedly would be To have your advocate with you. We're thoroughly trained with new laws that come out. We're thoroughly trained to be your voice. And when we go into the hospitals or you call on the hotline, we are obligated to be that voice for you, to give you information. If you don't want to speak, it's been plenty of times where I've stepped out into the hallway and said, he does not want a police officer present at the time, and the police have to leave. They cannot make you go. Advocates do not work with the prosecutor's office. So we're trained to solely cater towards you, good, bad, ugly, and different. We don't care what the situation was. You could have went to a party. You could present drunk. You could be high on drugs. Our job is to be there for you. Now, if you are high, if you are drunk, we do wait until you're in a stable enough mental capacity so that you could say, I want an advocate, because we want to make sure that whatever is done, that your power of choice is given back to you on that day. So if you've been assaulted, if you're pondering, if it's just happened, if it's fresh, I highly suggest you could call your hotline, first and say, I'm going to present. You could give them heads up, or you could just present to the hospital and say, I've been sexually assaulted, and they'll make the phone calls. You do not have to answer any questions. You could say, I'd rather wait for my advocate to come, or I'd rather wait for, my advocate to call. If you do not speak English, they do have a translation line, but everything that you discuss with your advocate is 100% confidential. We do not go back to the nurses. We do not go back to the police officer. We do not say anything. And it's been times people have came, young people, and they fabricated stories because they were afraid of what their parents would say. I'm not there to judge you. I'm not there to call you a liar, right? I'm not there to say anything but to make sure that your care is number one for me. So I just wanted to let everyone know that yes, I may have had a bad experience, but that was one of the reasons why I decided to join the team. But we are trained to be your voice and to stand up for you when you feel like you cannot stand up.
Oh, thank you so much for talking about that. That's incredible.
Welcome.
Oh, I had some questions along the way, and you answered them before I even could ask them. So thank you so much. That's incredible
You're
to hear
welcome.
about that. What was it like? You said that it was actually very like healing and powerful to do the training to become an advocate and to work within the rape crisis thing. I'm actually interested in doing that myself. Um, I've also talked to other survivors, and I think a lot of us have the concern that it would actually be triggering, and to be in a situation where you were dealing with someone who's really raw, or in a triggered state. What what would you say about that, or what's your experience with that, Ben, about like self-regulation, managing that, or encountering that?
So you are not alone as an advocate. So what normally happens with the county that I was with, it's required that if I get a call tonight, I get calls. I have to call in when my shift is over, like the next business day, and I have to just kind of talk about the calls, give information. You do a check-in, and it's a mental check-in as well. Um, and then there's always like a person over you who's on to supervise. You don't call them unless you have an issue. So they always offer you the support as well. And then you also learn my issue, I think, as being an advocate sometimes was leaving and knowing that I was not going to speak to that person probably ever again. Because once I'm done, is up to the next, everybody's trained. So they're not necessarily dealing with the same person. They probably go to, the supervisor, or they'll go to, if they decide, okay, I'm going to go to the police department tomorrow, then it'll be a different advocate that would go with them. So they don't keep you on the same case. And a lot of times I would be so mind boggled, like, what happened? I hope they're okay, or something like that. That's when your own personal coping skills come into play. Where you could kind of, just kind of release that, like you're there for that moment. And I would say be present in that moment for them. But when afterwards you call the hotline and you could say, this call was really triggering to me. We had monthly meetings that were mandatory where we all the advocates got together and we would sit down over a meal and we would just talk about if something really bothered us. That was our venting session because again, everything's 100% confidential. So I can't call a family member and say, hey, I just had this crisis that you can't do that because you're violating confidentiality, right? And so that was the protocol. And I believe that that's a very healthy protocol because when you're in the moment of, and you're dealing with these cases, sometimes it's good to say or call the person who's on for that night to supervise you. Hey, I just had this call. I'm not in a good place right now. And be able to talk about it, or on that Monday when you call and you give them the information about the calls, or because unfortunately you have some people that get off on just playing on the hotline. And so sometimes you have to, learn. Yeah, people call and joke around. We've had some people call and they tell these stories to get your reaction so that they could kind of get off from, them telling the story and the reaction. So you get all types of calls on the hotline. So it's good to have those people to kind of call, your superiors to call to say, hey, I'm dealing with this, or hey, this same person keeps calling with this same story, or I hear them doing something in the background. And so there's regulations and protocols for you to follow that kind of keep you guarded and kind of keep you in a safe place. And if not, they offer the services to you so that you'll be able to deal with whatever call or case that you've had.
Thank you for talking about that too, because it didn't even occur to me that someone would do that, but of course they would.
Yeah, of course.
Unfortunately.
Why not?
Of course. Why
Yeah,
wouldn't you?
yeah. Why not?
Yeah, wow. Oh, what a trip. Yeah, I actually may have dealt with something like that, and I am not a part of an organization. I don't have that support network, and so I was left to just kind of have this kind of surreal experience of like, I don't know if this is real, and I can't make that judgment. So all I can do is to continue providing like the most authentic support that I can, and give you the best advice that I can for
Mhm.
how to like reach out to other resources in your area, um, and to improve your safety or your support network or grow that support network, and to continue validating whatever
Mhm.
it is that you say without, you know, questioning it, and hope that if it's real that this has been helpful to you, and if it's not real that you just get bored and maybe realize that you're being a jerk.
And so yeah, and we learned that the key thing is really just giving people back their voice. So a lot of times we listen, and the key is so that it doesn't wear you out is just to really redirect them by asking questions like, well, what do you normally do when you're feeling like this? Oh, you listen to music. Have you tried that? Is re-empowering them, and that's the key. Or if it becomes too much, excuse me, if it becomes too much, I would give them the hotline and say, hey, you could call, and they have the resources, they can help you out, because sometimes people will drain you with their stories, drain you with whatever they're going through. And most people who are advocates, most people who work in this sector have a heart of gold. And we want to help everyone, we want to help them work through things. And sometimes you got to say, listen, let me refer you out to, here's the agency number. Here's, who you would call. Here's who you could talk to. They're trained in this area. So, it's kind of like, let me just refer you. Like I can help you out a little bit, but these people are kind of trained to do it. And all they do really is just empower you to make that decision of, and if it becomes too much, they give referrals to counseling.
As someone who's experienced same-sex assault, how has that changed the support that you've been able to access in your life, do you think?
It was rough at first, transparent moment. So when I experienced the same sex assault, I was kind of indulging in my sexuality. I was, out of a relationship, and I had tried to date a female, um, and so that's the kind of the place where I was at. And so when my assault happened, it was kind of like, are you sure you just didn't want to sleep with her and she turned you down? So now you're screaming rape. And it's like, really? And that came from family members. I mean, even my mom didn't believe me at first, right? It was kind of like, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm sure. I wouldn't lie about something as serious as rape. And so, being that I stated earlier, I started young. And so, becoming sexually active at the age of 12 and being in and out of falsified relationships, and I say that because I was too young to know what a relationship was at the time, right? And so being in these sexual relationships or being living a promiscuous type of lifestyle, when something that serious presents, no one believes you. They think that you are just this person who is just promiscuous, and now you're trying to put something on someone else. And so that's another factor to let people know. It does not matter what your lifestyle is. You can be a prostitute. You can be, whoever you want to be. At that moment, no means no. At that moment, any type of non-consent means that's non-consent, and I'm not doing it. And any violation in regards to that is rape. Any violation there is assault. You know what I mean? Like, no means no, and that's all it is. Even if you say yes at first and you change it to a no, that's no. If you say no at first, change it to a yes, and you change your mind, that's still a no. If they decide to give you a little bit of wine to make you a little bit more comfortable, now you have placed me in a position to where it's still sexual assault because you got me drunk. I was not coherent enough to make a conscious decision to say that I wanted to sleep with you. And that's another thing that advocates do. We let you know it does not matter your walk of life, what you do. No is always no.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. And that's yeah, the the lack of understanding that we have culturally as far as consent goes, and the lack of agreement as well,
Hmm.
just culturally is, I think, really feeds into a lot of the shame and the blame. That's a big part of things for survivors. And yeah, how did you navigate that personally, like within your own healing, shame and blame?
Um, and again, I believe that my training was a big part of it, outside of my own personal relationship with the Lord, and just understanding that, again, no means no. No matter what I've done, no matter what lifestyle I may have lived at the time, I'm still a victim. And still, my decision on that day does not constitute, at first you kind of blame yourself. And I did, at first I was like, oh, I should never put her in my car. I should have never taken her anywhere. I shouldn't have did. I shouldn't have did. I shouldn't have did. And, she's out on the street telling her story. I'm telling my story. Some people believe you, some people don't. And I just got to the point to where I just was like, I was still violated at the end of the day, no matter what. And I had to, forgiveness wasn't even just about me saying to her, I forgive you. It was me saying to me, I forgive myself for even allowing for myself to take on that pressure. Listen, we all make decisions, and we can't determine the outcome of our decision until it actually happens. So if you go out to a bar and you decide to pick up somebody, and you decide to go somewhere else and have a conversation, or even if you decide, maybe we'll indulge in something else, once you change your mind, that's what it is. You can't, don't fault, I'm not saying you can't, but don't fault yourself because of their actions. Their actions are wrong. their actions were wrong, and you're saying no, it's nothing wrong with that. You can change your mind. And that's your voice that you have. We have the power of choice. And so for me, the shame was really telling my story because a lot of people didn't believe me, right? And it was hurtful. Sometimes it was hurtful. People say, well, how could a woman rape a woman? Most men or people would find that to be something kind of sexy, right? Because it's just like one of those images that they would just see in their minds. But no, this was a traumatic event that actually happened, and it can happen to anyone. And I say that too a lot of times, and my heart goes out to men because I have seen men present to the hospitals, and because of the shame, they never report. They may go John Doe. I don't know if they ever go back to report, but a lot of men do not report out of shame. But there is nothing to be shameful of when you're the person who's been violated.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning men. Especially it's yeah, and I remember seeing that at Take Back the Night when I went as well. There were, I mean, so few men that were there, with, cis men, trans men, male presenting people, that actually got up the guts to be there, considering what the stats are. And then so few of them that had the courage to speak. And I mean, the ones that did, I've never forgotten it. It was so powerful, and there was just such a sense of isolation, and desperation for
Mhm.
connection and inclusion in this space, and also just this um yeah, it was just visceral, the way that they were in the room, like, and I mean, like, that space, that point in time, like, that subject matter, like, the space that was being held for survivors, and then the way that they were occupying that
Mhm.
space, you could tell that they were so uncomfortable, that they maybe didn't feel welcome, or weren't sure if it was valid, if they should be there. There were some of them that had, like, more fully embodied, like, I am a survivor, I am entitled to be here, to be in the space, and to hold it with you. And then there were, it was just, it really drove home for me, actually, like, in that space, meeting male survivors, talking about it, hearing them talk about it, and the lack of support that they receive in our society, and then them not being, so many survivor spaces being, uh exclusively for women, or femme people, and just how inadequate and cruel that is, the shame and the stigma that exists. And yeah, if you have anything else to say about that, because it's also been, I started this podcast, and I was really big on intersectionality. Like, this happens to everybody, no matter what body you're born into, no matter what identity you are, like, race, religion, sexuality. It happens to all of us. And I really wanted to talk to all different kinds of people. I haven't been able to find, specifically a cis man, to come on the show, and it's been frustrating, because I know that I have cis men listening who don't hear a voice that sounds like theirs, and I know that that's got to be hard. That's, yeah.
I think that it's the stigma. A man is supposed to be a man, and a man's not supposed to cry, and so I think also men feel as if you'll question their sexuality, in regards to it, because just like men get raped by men, men get raped by women, and so a guy, when you talk about it, sometimes people are like, a guy raped by a female, and it's like, yes, because you know It happens. A man's no is still no. And what people need to understand is even though your body reacts as it should, right? When you're in those type of situations, does not mean that what happened to you wasn't wrong. And so I think a lot of times that's kind of what it is, people, and then guys, especially guys who were assaulted by a man, they're like, well, why, did I reach my peak, and why is this? But it's still assault, because your body mechanism, your body chemistry is created to react in a certain way when certain things are done to you. And so that is even with women who are sexually assaulted, it's the same thing. You may reach your peak, but that does not mean that you were not violated in some type of way. It just means that your body is normal. You are human. That's what it means. So, for men, my heart goes out, because a lot of times when they've reported, it was kind of like no, I'm going John Doe. Just treat me. Just give me the medication. Just, get me in and out. And sometimes they don't even report because they're scared. They're scared of what people would say. Would somebody believe them? It's just a really bad situation. Just overall, I feel that they experience or that they go through. And I just hope that they can technically get their voice back. I think I told you before that I knew a couple of survivors, so I will definitely, I'm going to write this down in my calendar, because I have to write stuff down. But I have to definitely reach out and see if they're willing to speak and, come forward. I know some of them do speak already and do talk about what they've actually gone through. And I think that is something that is very important for people to hear, because there is nothing new under the sun. And if it happened to you, it happened to someone else. The key thing is for us to come together and support one another, not be so judgmental. You never know what a person has gone through, what they're currently going through. You never know the effects that it can have on them. As to why. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be something that happened to you by someone that or somebody that you don't know. It could be people that you know. It could be something in childhood. The list could go on and on and on and on and on. And so what I would really say is that if you are a man and you've experienced that, you are not alone. There are tons of support groups out there that can help you and assist you. Maybe not enough support groups, that I would say, but you can, once you come through, you can make that difference as well. And you can be that support for someone as well. There's a lot of men who are out there hurting, but just be strong and, find someone. You can always call the hotline as well and speak to someone. And again, those calls are 100% confidential, and just be able to speak to them and find out what you can do and get some resolve. And the only time that when I say confidentiality, the only time that we are as advocates required to report is if, and I have to say this, is if you tell someone, whoever's on the line, that the assault happened between a minor child, anyone who is under 18, 17 and under, or if you're saying that you're calling and you're going to hurt someone, or someone hurt yourself or hurt someone else, then by law we are required to report it and to say something. Other than that, everything else is 100% confidential.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making that note. I really appreciate that. And thank you for talking about that. That's incredibly important. I'd like to, with the time that we have left, I'd like to shift gears, and I'd like to talk to you about Inspired by You, and what that is, how that came
Yes.
about.
Yes. So Inspired by You, it started as a hashtag. And so what I used to do is so much negativity out there. And I used to go through my friends' posts on Instagram, and they would post some friends would post something that was just so phenomenal. And I would post, and I would take their post and repost it. And I would be like, thank you for posting this. I am inspired by you. Right. And over time, for me, I'm like, ooh, inspired by you. It's just a great idea, because I wanted inspire people to change because they're inspired by you, right? Something that you did inspired them to change. And so, funneled through Inspired by You came so much, and which was my coaching business. I'm a certified life and development coach. I specialize in trauma recovery. So I'm titled as certified trauma recovery coach. And so it was my small business mentorship. I mentor small business owners or people who are looking to go into business. A lot of times my coaching and the mentorship for business goes hand in hand. Some people find that it's difficult to move forward in their business. A lot of times it's something dealt behind trauma. And so I would host events through my business, inspiring things, uplifting things. I have a Facebook page I normally go live on, depending on, and I talk about issues or that are relevant to people to today. And I normally upload those videos to YouTube as well. And so it's really just inspiring people any kind of way that you can, so that as they see you change, it'll inspire for them to want to change. A lot of times you have silent people who silently look at you and they see you growing and see you progressing, and they're like, well, what did you do? And and it's kind of like, well, this is what I've done so that I could get to this point. And so maybe you can do the same thing, or maybe I could pull you along, or maybe I can help you along to change. And I've gone through so much in my life that I feel so relatable to so many different people on so many different levels. And so Inspired by You was birth. Um, we are still growing. I have rebranded a couple of times. I never rebranded what I believed in regards to inspiring others to change because they are inspired by you. But just it's so much deeper than that. And it's really just dealing with people who are in hurt places, who, they want to move forward. They want to be that person, that role model, that person. And it's just kind of pushing them along the way.
Mhm. That's beautiful. That's
Thank you.
awesome. Yeah, you mentioned just in terms of relating to so many different people and so many different struggles, and some of the things that you mentioned in your bio included, I think, like homelessness and divorce, and yeah, I just kind of wanted to see if you're willing to talk about that a little bit, or yeah, or just some of the things that I think you feel
Yes.
like relate to so many different people and struggles.
Yes. So trauma is defined as something that's deeply distressing or disturbing experience, right? And so that could present to someone in so many various different ways. And I've gone through, starting off losing my best friend when I was 12 to gun violence. Um, Losing my parents. I lost the older sibling, and losing my mom, and having to be that person who would have to make the decision of whether to make a medical decision that could change her life. Hence I made the decision, and she wound up dying the next day, so that was kind of hard. I lost my dad to COVID. You lose pets. And sexual assault, domestic violence, marital sexual assault, marital domestic violence, the controlling factor of the going through bullying as a child, because you're different. Like you said, church hurt. Sometimes we're in church and we experience things, and I like to tell people that, and even to you, like, don't be discouraged. I understand people could be harsh. What I do understand as well is that people that are in church come from off the streets. And so a lot of times you think that they should be different, but a lot of times they're not. And so that's why it's always just so, I always direct people back to the basics to learn for themselves, because a lot of times people will be people all the time. The Bible says that the arms of flesh will fail us every time. But back to my story. So, just different layers of trauma, being in and out of, I was married twice. The first time I got married, it was because I was pregnant for a second time and I wasn't married. And the church at the time that I was attending, the pastor told me I had to get married because that was the right thing to do. And so you wind up in a marriage with someone who totally doesn't believe what you believe, who's totally abusive towards you, and marital rape in regards to I wound up having my son early because he decided that he was excited. My ex-husband, he was excited, and I was like, I don't want any, and he took it anyway. And I wound up in the hospital, and I delivered my son when I was 6 weeks pregnant. Um, I came home. I've stayed at the Ronald McDonald House, and I love that place. I think if I ever became a millionaire, they would be one of the top people that I donate to. They will be one of the top people I donate to. And so going through the homelessness behind that and having to stay there and just life. I was setting up an interview for another podcast, and her podcast is based around murder, and it's not really dealing with the murderer of the situation. It has to deal with the healing process of the family and what they go through when your family goes through. And she calls me, and we're having a conversation. I'm like, I experienced that. My aunt was murdered with her stepdaughter, and so you have these conflict and murdered by our first cousin, her first cousin. So you have a whole family that's one family, but the murderer was a cousin who murdered his other cousin. And so being in that and dealing with that trauma.
Oh
So
my
when
God.
I say that I'm relatable to a lot of people, I've walked a lot of different paths. I've experienced a lot of different paths. I've seen a lot of different things. And a lot of it, when it was personal, had to do with, again, forgiving myself. Some of the things that we've gone through is just due to bad choices that we've made in life, right? Poor money management, poor budgeting. I used to gamble. Oh man, I used to gamble my life away because that was a coping mechanism for me at one point in time. Because when I was going through with my ex-husband, we would go to the casino together because that was our only place that we never argued. So we found ourselves there. So then when we finally split, I found myself in that place trying to shield away. I don't know if you've ever been to a casino, but there's no lights, there's no clocks. Everything looks like it's daytime. Yeah, it just looks like it's daytime all the time. And so just
Yeah,
being
they like
in
set
there,
it up
just
to suck you
yeah,
in and
just so that you could just be there with no sense of anything. So that used to be my escape. And so when I say I'm relatable to a lot of people, that's what I did. It just caused me to be in that place to where I was just like, this is my escape. This is what I did. And so yes, my bio is only a snippet of what I've gone through, like a very tiny snippet of, being in that place where you start things, you don't complete a task, or, you feel like it's going to take too long, but it really wouldn't have if you would have waited. Because, I used to sign up for school and come out because my graduation date was 2021. And I'm like, 2021? It's 2015. What you mean? Like, that's so far away. So, like, learning to be patient and to embrace the moment, embrace your journey, embrace, and then understanding that life is not over. Even if you've gone through something, I'm a strong believer in strategically planning out your life as much as possible, having a plan, writing it out, and really just, following those steps. We have goals that we write out, but you need a strategic plan because sometimes the goals that we write, there's steps that you need to do before you achieve that goal. And that's really just understanding that.
wow. I'm really curious, how was there kind of like I'm really curious what that kind of transition was. When did you kind of get to that place or start to realize that maybe you had gone from a place where you were uh kind of in a spot where you were like, I'm healing, and then move into uh a mental space where it was like, I'm capable of empowering other people. I could help other people. I could heal other people with, things like the rape crisis, Take Back the Night, and Inspired by You, and writing this book. So these things that you've been doing, what was that transition like? Like, how did you get from that space of uh of wounding and healing into now I'm strong and I'm ready to hold this space for other people and to inspire and heal other people.
I believe it's a process. It doesn't all come at once because we process at one, thing at a time. And so I do not take on more than I could chew. Let me say that. I still have my own support system. I believe that every coach needs a coach. I believe that every coach needs a mentor. I'm mature enough to say that when I lost my father last year to COVID, that I was like, I am not okay, right? Because it's okay not to be okay. And so I'm human, right? I'm human just like everyone else. Um, but I'm in a place that, where I can say, I can help you out. If I cannot be of assistance to someone, I will not play with someone's life. I will definitely refer them out. I will be that extra added support. I will not take on more than I can chew because, again, it's someone's life. And so I deal with the issues that I know that I'm capable to deal with. Now, I can coach in any single area. I am thoroughly trained. I have my degree in Divinity. I'm currently in my master's program right now. And so it's very few things that I could coach in, but if I feel like someone's area is too much, right? Because a coach is really just there to empower you, to push you on. It's not counseling services. We don't counsel people. It's really empowering you to do what you know that lies in you and kind of pulling it out of you to help you to see the strategies of how you can get to the place to where you want to get to. And I think a lot of times people confuse coaching with counseling, and those are two totally different things. So for me, a lot of my clients are in the places where I have been. And that's why I'm able to come and say, now it took me a while, probably I've been a certified coach, I would say about 3 years. I did not start directly in the business. I was like, I don't know what's going on in my life. I was like all over the place. I was taking all these different certifications and all kinds of stuff. And so really just what would I do? And I was coaching almost my whole life, right? So what would I do if I wasn't getting paid for it? And so coaching for me, being a trauma recovery coach, is not about the money. If you look on my website, I'm extremely reasonable. Not only that, I offer 2 free sessions and I still give my 100% to my clients, to those who inquire. I don't turn anybody away because I want to see everyone walk in liberty and walk in freedom. And so my aha moment was about 2 years ago when I launched Inspired by You. It'll be 2 years come May that it would officially be a legal business. And unfortunately, last year, the day that
Congratulations.
thank you, I plant my 1 year anniversary. My dad died on my 1 year anniversary date. And so I stopped. And I think we had that conversation when we met. And so it was okay for me to stop. So, some people go, well, how can you coach? And, you're going through this, but I'm human, right? And so a lot of people, when they look for a trauma recovery coach or they look for a coach who deals in trauma, they want someone who is hands on, have been through something, who can relate to what they're going through, because I don't just come with book knowledge. I have it. I have the papers behind my name, but I also come with life experiences to understand. I have one client and, I tell him, okay, you can vent today, but what are you going to do tomorrow to change your situation? What can we do to fix this? Okay, you wasn't able to do this. Well, what can you do to fix this situation? And so I understand, I can relate, but then what are we going to do to move past it? You could cry today, but we got to work through this tomorrow, right? And that's kind of where I'm at because I've gone through it and I understand the tears. So I'm with you 100%. But now it's time for me. I can't sit at your level with you but for so long because we're not going to get anywhere. But I have to come up and pull you up and say you could do this. You could supersede this. You could get past what you're going through.
When do you think life coaching would be helpful to somebody? Under what circumstances, or when would you suggest it for somebody?
If someone feels like they're doing the same thing over and over again and not getting results.
Mm.
Where
So,
if someone feels like they're just not progressing and they really just don't know why, we could indulge into those areas and see. I'm the type of coach where if I feel like the situation just, entails it needs escalation, then I will say, okay, hey, maybe you should consider some counseling for this area. Um, and it's not always necessary sometimes. Sometimes it's just helping them process through a certain area where it won't necessarily take a counseling, but where, again, where they could just say, okay, I feel a little stuck, or I've been in business and it's not going much further. Sometimes it's fear, again, sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it really just depends on, that person. But there's a lot of good coaches out there. A lot of coaches offer consultation. You have to kind of find the person that works with you, your good fit. Um, and again, like I said, that's why I do two, free coaching sessions, because you might meet with me the first day, you might fill me out. The second time, you might be like, I don't think we're going to be a good fit together. Or you may say, oh, we're great. Let's move forward. Let's continue to progress. Either which way, my desire, my heart's desire is always just, again, to see people progress in life and to go as far as they're destined and purpose to go.
mhm. I want to, with the time that we have left, there's a few things that I want to get to, and I think one might lead into the other. But I wanted to ask about your faith and the role that that's played in your healing and in your life.
Yes. So I always say transparent moment. Um, so I was raised in church my whole entire life, charismatic church. But I got to a place in time where I questioned, right? Because I think a lot of people question sometimes, and it's like, I've been told this, and is it really real? And so I had to do some soul searching, and I had to be like, God, if you're real, make it real to me. Because a lot of times we operate in a place of religion. We look at people in their religious ways, their religious studies, right? And so when Christ came, he didn't bring religion. There was so many religions out there, Judaism, and you had the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and everybody was teaching something. And what he was teaching was about the kingdom of God and just the principles of for us to live by and how to live. I think that when you understand that, and you understand that we were created to have a relationship with God, a personal relationship with Him. So that means that if I want to do certain things and you feel like it's not right, but I don't feel bad about it. Like, like I have my own personal relationship with the Lord, my own personal things that we've dealt with. I could sit and cry and talk and it don't come back through anybody else. And it's just like you develop a relationship with like a regular person, like a friendship. And it's the same thing that I do with God. My faith is big because I just believe that He's created me. I believe He created me for a purpose, and that my purpose ties back to His purpose, which is again to see people walk in a freedom that He created all mankind to have. And a lot of times we put our own blockers up. My pastor said it best on Sunday that we look at ourselves sometimes and we think that we're not good enough. And when God created mankind, human beings, His first words was, it's good. And so when we realize that He created us in a good place, a good manner, and that He wishes that we prosper and be in health as our soul prospers, and He wants good things for us. And sometimes the lessons that we learn or the things that we go through in life is not always a walk in the park. And I say that because it has to teach us life lessons. We have to learn. It's just like a baby, right? Before they start walking, they fall a couple of times. But the best part is falling, knowing and having my faith to be assured that He's with me, and that even though it may get rough, the book of Isaiah says that when you go through the fire, He's there. When you're in the flood of life, he's there. And just to know that his name is Emmanuel and that he's with us and he walks with us, that's the best part. I love I'm just saying that because, in relationships, sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes he doesn't say anything, but that's just like when you take a test in school, the person who's giving you the test, they don't talk while you're taking the test. But sooner or later, you'll see the outcome of your test. And so my faith and my walk with the Lord, I wouldn't necessarily say religion. I don't deem myself to be a religious person. I deem myself to be a child of God, and because that's how he created us to be his children, a person who has a relationship with him, who can say that sometimes I've made decisions that wasn't in his perfect will, but even though I made those decisions, he gave me the strength to push through them, the strength to overcome them, and the strength to look back and say, whew, I came through that, and I'm good. I'm okay, and I came out with a lesson. And that's why I can't keep it to myself and walk around and see people who are bound or people who are stuck and not bring them out. And I don't push religion on people because a lot of people don't want to hear that. But if I can display Emmanuel, God is with us through my actions, through my words, through my empathy, through me just being authentically who I am, that alone would be enough for someone to say, you've inspired me, right? I want to change because I'm inspired by you. And that's my main purpose. That's my goal. I love my faith. And I say a lot of times people, when they present Christendom, they present it as if life is going to be this blissful life. But the Apostle Paul tells us, and I'm not going to get all deep, but he tells us that he struggled with something and he had a thorn in his side. And he was like, God, remove this from me. But it was that one thing that kept him close to God. Because if we are just this perfect people, we'll never understand that we still need him, that we still need, and still need to rely on him if everything just came so easy. So that's our reality checks. But the blessed part about it is to know that no matter what I'm going through, that I'm going through it with him. So my faith is something that's there to keep me encouraged and to keep me lifted, that when the chaos of this world is everything is going crazy, I have the peace of God in my life to understand that nothing can happen to me unless God says so. And that at the end of the day, it says that he knows the thoughts and the plans that he has for us. And it says not to harm you, but to bring you to your expected end. And so at the end of the day, I'm always on his mind. The hairs on my head are numbered. He said, if I care about the birds and the foxes and their place to live, what more would I care about you? And so I have that assurance and that assurity to know that God is with me, and that no matter what I go through, he's the lifter of my head.
Mm. That was beautiful. Thank you for talking about that. And I loved what you said about being filled with God's love, and that means that it's not necessary to press religion on other people. And something that just I thought of while you were talking about that, and you talked about being around other people, and inspiring them, and I just thought in terms of like, if you are filled with God's love and with light and you shine in other people's lives, that then you've brought God's love into their life. You don't It's there, and you don't have to, like, preach. It's not necessary. You've brought it into their life, and however they interpret it, or whatever name they put upon it, light is light and love is love, and that's what it's about ultimately. And so
Yeah.
I think you definitely glow, and it's a pleasure
Thank
to meet you and to talk to you. The first time we talked, you told a story about Lazarus, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it is, but I wrote it down because I was really excited. And I would love if you remember what it was you
I
said.
do.
I would love for you to share it.
Yes. So what I share about Lazarus is what I share with people even now. Last year, and I always refer back because I'm writing this book based around grief and loss and trauma. And I thought when I wrote the book, I'm just giving you a little background story. So I thought when I wrote the book that it was going to be based around the loss of losing my mother. So I started writing and I got these chapters. And for some reason, I get writer's block, right? So people tell you get blocked, keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. I just could not write. I told you I put everything into my writings because I don't write like a standard author that's out there who'll just pen a book in 2 days because they just got all these wonderful thoughts. And so um, I lose my dad. And I was not okay. And I'm like, God, and I told you I have, the Lord and who's the lifter and his peace, and, I'm processing everything. And the Lord brought me to the scripture. People always talk about it. And the scripture is Jesus wept. And so I'm like, Jesus wept. So when I start, you like Google, like, what does it say? Let's show the scripture in the Bible, right? People are like, oh, let's show the scripture in the Bible. Not really paying attention to it, but it's so powerful. It's powerful when you're dealing with grief. It's powerful when you're dealing with trauma. Why? Because even though Christ was 100% God and 100% man, he still showed us that in his humanity side, that he stopped to process his emotions and process his feelings. Knowing that he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, knowing what the end of the outcome would be, because he's God, he's all knowing. And so he already knew, but his human side, he showed us, is okay to take time out for self care. It's okay to process your feelings. It's okay to process your emotions. The thing is that whatever that thing is that you need to process, as Jesus wept, and it's a period on the end, it wasn't a comma, it was not a semicolon. When Jesus wept, he stopped. That's what it tells us. He stopped. And after he stopped, it doesn't say for how long. Normally, the Bible sometimes references, he went away for a little while, or, he stilled away to the noontime, or whatever. It's a period. And so there may have been a gap in between there. I don't know how long that gap was. And so I don't know how long your healing is going to take, but it's okay to be busy as he was, as Christ was. He was busy. He was healing people and walking about it. He was teaching. He had death of his best friend. He stopped. He processed his feelings. Jesus wept. He cried. He showed us it's okay. We are human. We are not super people, as people would sometimes think that we are. We don't have to keep it moving, as they tell us, KIM, keep it moving, keep it going. You don't have to do that. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to stop. Christ stopped. He processed his emotions, and then he went along to raise Lazarus from the dead. So you would think that, oh, he wasted tears. No, what he did was he showed us he was human, and that he had to process, his human side had to process the fact of a loss, right? The process, the emotions, the grief, the people saying, if you was only here, Mary, Lazarus' sister was like, if you was only here, he wouldn't have died. So now it's the scrutiny, it's the everything that we go through when we're going through something traumatic. He went through all of that, and he stopped to process it. And afterwards, he continued his purpose and his goal of what God had, brought him to do. So he went about and he continued his healing and everything after he processed that. But, I had a great conversation with my pastor, and he was saying, like, Christ always displayed to us self-care. He always left the disciples and went and stealed away early in the morning or late at night to take some time to be by himself. And so the lesson that we have to learn is we have to learn self-care, and it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to stop. I tabled my business last year for a few months before I did anything. I think this year I really kicked back into high gear because I had to stop and I had to process the emotions that I was dealing with. And that, again, that goes back to me saying that I'm still human. I have my coach was on the phone with me. My counselor was, I do go to counseling. My counselor was on the phone with me, during that time of me processing what I needed to process at the time. Did that mean that I couldn't help out anyone else? No, that just means that I had to take the time out to make sure that Santéresa was okay before Santéresa was able to make sure that someone else was okay.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that story. I fell
You're
in love with
welcome.
it all over again, and I'm so excited to share it. Oh, I love it. It's so powerful. Oh, and I love the idea of Jesus not only being a teacher of all the things that he was a teacher of, but being this amazing example of someone who practices good self-care. I think that's incredible.
Yes.
All about it. Love
Yes.
it. Love it.
Yes.
Um, I know that we are technically out of time, but I would love just to wrap up if you have the time for one more question. Is that okay?
Sure. That's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, is there anything that you want to say to other survivors?
I just want to tell other survivors that you can make it. There is healing. Healing is possible. Don't self bully yourself. Don't beat yourself up. It is not your fault. No matter what you've gone through, it is not your fault. And just to be encouraged. I'm here. If you reach out to me, through my website, through Instagram, I am on Clubhouse as well. I'm on Twitter, but if you reach out to me, those messages are 100% confidential. I do have an assistant, but um, all my messages, because I am a trauma recovery coach, they come to me first. And so I'm able to filter through and to see if you deem that is something that's urgent. I would say contact your local crisis center and speak to them. Um, if you have benefits on your job, look into your EAP programs. You can get free counseling. They're open 24/7, 7 days a week, where you could call them up. A lot of times our jobs offer them. We never take advantage of those programs, or we hear about it and it's called an employee assistance program. We hear about it, we just never utilize it. But I found that to be a great tool, especially now. A lot of insurances have lowered the cost on counseling and things like that. So there's help out there. And then you have your support, via this podcast, as well as other, sources that's out there. But I definitely want to say that I am available, if you are looking for a coach, or if you're looking for someone to talk to, even if you don't want me. Listen, we are not meant to be loners. We were not created to be loners. We were created to be helpers of one another, to walk out this journey with each other, and just get with someone, talk to someone, don't hold it in. Even if you have to just write until you can find someone to talk to, get it out. It will be so liberating and so freeing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing so much of yourself and your life and your love and your light and your passion. And
Thank you for having me.
I'm just so touched, and I'm so grateful. Yeah. And have a beautiful workout, have a beautiful day, and so much love.
Thank you, you too. All right, take care.
Take
Bye.
care.
Keep on loving, keep on fighting, and hold on, and hold on. Hold on for your life.